Allow my autistic daughter to get attacked at recess. Fine, allow my husband to absolutely violate you. A couple days ago, my daughter Olivia was assaulted during recess at her middle school. She was punched in the face by a boy who's known to be the class bully. I received a call from the school principal that started out with him saying that the school nurse felt my daughter needed to be seen in the emergency room. When I asked what happened, he sort of blew me off and urged me to pick her up immediately. My heart sank to my stomach. I sped over to the school as fast as I could. On the way there, I called my husband and he was already aware of the situation. He also just left work to go to school, so that made me feel a bit better. When I got there, I went to the front office and saw my daughter sitting by herself with an ice pack over her right eye. For context, my daughter is nonverbal and has autism. So when I saw her sitting by herself unsupervised, I was furious. She stood up and hugged me with her free arm while the other one held the ice pack over her eye. I almost cried, but I held it together for her. I put my arm around her and we walked to the back of the office in search of the principal. We get to the back and the principal is sitting at his desk, eating chips and typing on his laptop. I asked him what happened to my daughter and why she was left unsupervised in the front. He blew me off again. All he said was, "Ma'am, you can take your daughter to the hospital now." Mind you, this is my first interaction with this principal. We don't have an established relationship, so I'm flabbergasted at his rudeness. Also, she clearly doesn't need to go to the ER. She's not crying or throwing a fit. The only evidence of injury is a small ice pack over her eye. He brashly continues telling me that he's not sure what else he can do for me. He states that he's already advised me to seek out medical attention for my daughter, but if I don't comply with his advice, it's not his problem. Have you ever broken up with a man because of his Johnson? If so, why? The last guy I dated had a Johnson like a freaking traffic cone. It started off a bit smaller than average at the top and would eventually widen out to be as thick as a Coke can, it seemed. It was maybe 5 inches long, but went from like a 4-inch girth head to like 8-inch girth base. So anyway, one day he decided to just thrust his whole crap into me without getting me truly prepared. I bled. It was awful. Never again. It was for more reasons than just his Johnson, but I deduced later that it had to be his Johnson that caused me to have multiple issues with my kitty. I never had a UTI before we met, never had an abnormal pap, and didn't have a lot of bladder infections. The 2 years we dated, I had more bladder infections and UTIs than most people have in their lifetime. I had 2 abnormal paps and had to get a cervical biopsy. Thankfully, it came back fine. I crap you not, since we broke up, I have never had an issue again. I have no idea what the cause was, but I chalk it. I think my boyfriend is lying about his divorce. His ex-wife is a little too close. Since we agreed to see each other on Tuesdays, Carl has come to my house every single Tuesday from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., but refuses to see me any other day and out of that time frame. He has always arrived perfectly on time at 11 a.m. and always left promptly at 3 p.m., no exceptions. As well as this, every single time he comes over, he brings this tiny, dirty chihuahua along with him. Well, last week I found out that this dog he has been bringing belongs to his ex-wife. His excuse for this was that he likes taking the dog on walks and they do 10 miles of walking every day together, but he works too much to commit to getting a dog for himself. I found this to be really odd, but I didn't question him about it any further. I know 10 miles might seem like a lot to walk the dog every day, and to be honest, I don't quite believe it myself. But I know that he does walk the dog regularly, as every Wednesday and Thursday he calls me whilst he walks the dog. This is always between 4 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. with, again, no exceptions. He always ends the call at exactly 6:30 and always calls at exactly 4. Anyways, a couple years ago I got the dreaded call that my dad died. I was absolutely distraught as he was my biggest supporter and was always there for me. I asked Carl if he would come to the funeral with me, but he refused as the funeral was being held on a Sunday, and not during his allotted time to see me. Tuesdays 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Of course I was upset by this, but eventually, I convinced myself that he was probably just busy. Fast forward another year, I had become very sick and I had ended up in hospital. It was so serious that the doctors had told me I would have died had I waited another day to seek medical help. I called Carl in despair and asked if he would bring me some clothes I had at home and drop them off at the hospital. Carl refused because I had asked him on a Saturday and not on a Tuesday. I was in so much pain, I was in the hospital for months. I constantly begged Carl to see me, and again he refused unless it was on a Tuesday. I think my boyfriend is lying about his divorce. His ex-wife is a little too close. My boyfriend and I have been together for 5 years. We met online, something I had never thought I would try. But at the time I had been single for many years and my sister had recommended it to me. I was reluctant at first. She kept telling me how she had found many dates through this website, and that it would be perfect for me as I'm always busy working so I could just use it in my free time or only when I felt like it. Anyway, one night over dinner she told me about this man she had recently met through the website, and how perfect he was for her, and how she could see a future with him, so I gave in. I gave it a try, not expecting to actually find someone, but when I matched with Carl, we hit it off instantly. He was so funny and charming, so we exchanged numbers and then agreed to meet for coffee the following week. When we met for coffee that day, Carl told me that he had just gotten a divorce from his wife of many years, who he has one daughter with. I was fine with this. I'm not really the jealous type of person, and he had assured me that he was ready to move on and that their relationship had been dying for ages. The first date went well, and after a few more successful dates, he asked me to be his girlfriend. I was over the moon as I really liked Carl. I have always been very passionate about my work. I'm a nurse, so my job is very demanding and intensive, which means I work most nights during the week, but still, I wouldn't change it for the world. I thought this may be a problem with Carl when we first started dating, as I wouldn't be available most nights, and during the day after working a shift, I would be catching up on sleep and therefore not available to see him or talk to him. However, this was not the case. Carl thought it was perfect, as he told me that he had a very busy schedule too, with his work, business appointments, and making time to see his daughter. Carl told me that he was always free on a Tuesday, which happened to align perfectly with my work schedule as I didn't work on Monday or Tuesday nights. He started coming over to my house every single Tuesday, pretty much every single week since, and that was 5 years ago. Here's where it starts to get a little bit weird though. My family and fiancé excommunicated me after my sister sabotaged me. I even returned my engagement ring. My friend knew someone a couple hours away who was looking for some help in his restaurant, and he even had living arrangements above where he worked, so I could get rent at a cheap price and work at the same time. I wanted to start over with my life, as it hurt me that no one took my side, and they all left me to fend for myself. I was able to move pretty quickly and was doing well. The apartment was tiny and I had to work 10+ hours almost every day, but I was able to save a lot of money. I'm not living in the apartment anymore. I was able to rent a much nicer condo, but I am still working at the restaurant as assistant manager. Now it has been roughly 2 years since I left, and have not spoken to any of my family. I had no idea what was going on with them until I got a knock on my door. It was my ex-fiancé. I was shocked, to say the least. All these feelings came rushing back, and all I wanted to do was jump into his arms. But then I remembered the pain I had felt and tried to slam the door in his face, but he stopped it and asked that I let him explain. He said that Nikki had gotten married and she had confessed that she lied about the situation because she had found someone she loved so much and realized what a horrible thing she had done. I asked him how he found me, and he said my friend told him. My entire family has been trying to get in touch with me and want to see me. I told him I needed time to see if I even wanted to have him in my life. He left, and I have been a mess since. I don't know what to do. I know I will never ever forgive Nikki. She could rot for all I cared. But it's hard because my other family and fiancé didn't know she was lying. But I also felt like they abandoned me too quickly without letting me explain my side. I don't know if I should forgive them. Any advice would be very helpful. Allow my autistic daughter to get attacked at recess? Fine, allow my husband to absolutely violate you. At this moment, I absolutely lost it. I began screaming and cursing like a sailor. Tears rolled down my eyes as I yelled at him about how unhelpful he was and how hard it is to deal with schooling staff that disregard my child's special needs. He stood up and tried calming me down, but to no avail. I went on and on about how he should be more compassionate for his students and that he would understand if he was a parent. At this moment, his demeanor went from worried to infuriated. He began yelling back at me. He told me he lost his first child a couple months ago due to a freak car accident. He said I have no right to judge his authority and that he's trying his best to overcome his own personal circumstances. He told me that if his son was alive right now, he would take him to the hospital without hesitation rather than storming to the back of the office and causing a ruckus in front of his child. I froze. I truly didn't have anything to say. I felt horrible for losing my temper and criticizing this man. However, at the same time, I knew my daughter did not need medical attention for a bruised eye. I don't know his financial circumstances, but I know that I can't afford outrageous hospital prices unless it's severe. I looked down at my daughter, who seemed calm but confused. She's looking up at me with her head turned to the side and biting her finger for context. Autistic children will bite or chew on their fingers in order to alleviate anxiety or stress. And this is definitely a stressful and anxiety-inducing situation I put my daughter in. I felt terrible and tried apologizing to the principal. In the middle of me trying to right my wrongs, he cuts me off and begins yelling at me to get out of his office. "Parents, how did you watch your kid's life go down the drain?" I got her to conversate a little near the end of dinner, but after we finished, I got in my car expecting her to follow. She didn't. She just stood there staring at me. I asked her what she was doing. Didn't she want to come back with me and have a new start? She came closer to me and told me something that will haunt me for ages to come. I can't come or they will find me and hurt me. That is where I drew the line. At this point, I knew I had to get the police involved. I insisted on her coming with me, but she said that they were watching now and that they had already warned her without me noticing while we were eating. I told her to stay where she was and don't move as I called the police. As the phone was ringing, I noticed that she seemed to look off in the distance, looked at something, and then moved right back to me. She hugged me one last time, said, "I'm sorry, but I love you, Mom." Then she ran. She ran faster than I ever could. I tried to catch up, but she just outpaced me. Eventually, I tried to get in the car to find her, but to no avail. It seemed that someone had picked her up just like that, and I had lost my baby in a matter of seconds. The police said they would look into it as I was desperately explaining to them what had happened. It's been a couple of months since, and I'm more depressed than I have ever felt in my life. I drink my despair away, waking up with the most vile hangovers. I've had multiple unaliving attempts, and my son has raised the idea of going to a psychiatrist or even a mental hospital. Him saying that has only made my depression worse, and I am drowning in my own sorrow. I now know my daughter is in trouble and I couldn't even protect her when she was right there in my possession. I feel like a failure of a mother, a failure of a protector, and failure of a human. Seeing my own daughter's life spiral out of control made me fall into my own pit of despair. I strive for the day I see her again, but I felt like that was my last chance, and it makes me extremely sad that I might never see that beautiful face again. Parents, how did you watch your kid's life go down the drain? It looked like a video of my daughter in a news report. At first I didn't understand why she would be on the news, but then I looked at the headline. Intimacy workers uproar in south side of town. I couldn't believe it. There was no way my daughter had really gone down that rough. The more I examined her in the clip, the more she looked drugged out of her mind. Tears started instantly floating from my eyes. Here I was sitting in my bedroom watching my daughter's life spiral out of control, and there was remotely nothing I could do about it. The video was from Los Angeles, California, and I lived in a small town in Texas. After a few days of living with this news, I decided that it was only right that I go and look for my daughter. In moments like this, I knew my child needed me. I booked the next available flight to Los Angeles and made my way there in less than a couple of days. The next few weeks consisted of me getting in my rental car and searching all over the south side of town just like the news report had said. I would pick a street, drive all the way down until it seemed to end, go over a block and repeat. I knew the chances of me seeing her were slim, but I had no other choice. At that point, I knew the police were really no help, and so I didn't bother contacting them. One day, the miracle happened. I was driving down a desolate, rundown neighborhood when I saw what looked like my daughter's distinct features. I got closer, rolled down my window, and shouted her name. "Lynn!" She turned around instantly, and there she was, my beautiful baby girl. I got out of my car and ran to her. To my surprise, she started running to me. "Mom! Mom!" We hugged each other like we never had before. Tears were rolling down each of our faces, and it was truly a moment I'll never forget. She got in my car after about 10 minutes of hugging and crying, and I took her to get food and sit down and talk. She still looked drugged out, and I could tell she was hurting. When we were eating, I thought we would have a good conversation, catching up about things and how everything was. Instead, she sat there with a dull look on her face the whole time, not really showing any emotion. I didn't know if this was the drugs talking, but it really spooked me out. My family and fiancé excommunicated me after my sister sabotaged me. During this time, I was sipping on a lot of different cocktails. I then started feeling really dizzy and lightheaded. I figured I'd just cab it home as I was certain Nikki had left. On the way out, though, I bumped into a friend of Nikki's whom she had briefly dated. He asked me if I needed a hand to my car, and I explained I was getting a cab. He said he was getting ready to leave, and we could share one. I told him okay, and we walked out of the club together and into the first cab we saw. I tried to find my phone in my purse, but I felt myself getting dizzier and dizzier. I don't remember what happened next as I blacked out, and the next morning I woke up on a hard sofa, my head pounding. When I came to, I realized I was in Nikki's friend's house, and my phone was sitting on the glass table in front of me, but it was dead on battery. When he noticed I was awake, he offered some tablets and water, and explained that I had passed out in the cab, and he didn't remember my parents' address, so he just picked me up and took me back here, where he laid me on the sofa. I told him I needed to go home as my fiancé would be worried. He called a cab and I left. When I arrived at my parents' house, my mother, father, Nikki, my fiancé and his parents were all standing in the living room. I thought they were worried about me, but the instant I opened my mouth, my fiancé asked, "How could I do this to him?" I tried to explain that my phone was dead, but he then went on screaming about how I cheated on him. I was baffled. Why would he think that? I tried to explain the night's events, but I kept getting cut off. Nikki then chimed in and said, I was lying, and asked how I could be so heartless to a man who has been there for me through thick and thin. She went on to say I kept flirting with random guys all night, and then when she went to the bathroom, she saw me leave with her friend. I told her what had happened, and she showed me photos on her phone, where as we were leaving, his hand was on my back, ushering me outside. Yes, the photo did look horrible, and I was so drunk I didn't even realize his hand was on my back at all. My fiancé was so angry, he kept shouting, and his mom and mine were both crying. Parents, how did you watch your kid's life go down the drain? My youngest daughter Lynn was always a beaming beam of light. She was always the happiest girl. She never complained about anything. Unlike her older brother Joshua, it was around her freshman year of high school when I started to notice a slight change in her behavior. She started to wear more makeup and less clothes. When confronted about it, she would always get very angry with me, shouting about how it's her body and she can do what she wants. Another grand excuse was "but everyone else is doing it, Mom." This was really hard for me to watch, because I was seeing my precious sweet little daughter trying to turn into what she thought was a real woman. I always tried to explain to her that makeup and wearing less clothes doesn't have to mean what everyone else is doing, and that she should take pride in what she wants to be. Regardless, she wouldn't budge, and I'm a big believer in more lax parenting, so at the time I just let her be. I thought maybe it would just be a phase, but our relationship slowly got worse and worse. Debates became arguments, and arguments became fights. She would start to bring guys over, and while I didn't get a look at all of them, I saw some that looked twice her age. Then one day I snapped. I was going through her room when she was gone for school one day to try and find something I knew she had taken. While searching the nightstand, I realized there was a tiny white baggie that was tucked in behind the lamp. I had my fair share of college days, so I knew exactly what that little baggie entailed. I had a huge confrontation with her when we got home from school. She eventually started to yell at me, and I returned the favor. It got so bad that the next morning when I checked on her to see if she left for school, she had vanished. 2 suitcases in my closet had gone missing, and I called the police immediately. How could my sweet Lynn do this? Run away from me, the person who loves her most in the whole world? Brad and I searched the whole neighborhood, drove for hours around our smaller town. We would find nothing, and so would the police. After around 4 years of no contact, one of my daughter's friend's mom shared a concerning post with me on Instagram. My family and fiancé excommunicated me after my sister sabotaged me. I need a little advice on the matter as I don't know what to do anymore. I was 21 when my fiancé asked me to marry him. He was the absolute light of my life. We had known each other since preschool. Our families are very close. He would come and have dinner with us on a daily basis and vice versa. He doesn't have any siblings, but I have 2 older sisters, which is very important as he was also very close with them. We grew up together. When we started dating, I don't think our parents stopped celebrating for weeks. He helped me deal with a lot of my anxiety, and even when I gained a little weight and my mother berated me saying he was going to leave me, he told her off and said he loved me for who I was, not for what I looked like, even though he claimed I was the most beautiful girl in the world. We were only engaged for 6 months before the incident. My middle oldest sister, let's call her Nikki, was a very cold person. She never showed any affection. She only ever opened up to my fiancé, as she said she saw him as a brother, and he also helped her through a lot of her dark times, such as battling drug addictions and breaking the law. She and I never saw eye to eye. I loved her dearly because she was my sister, but didn't like her as a person. Out of the blue, she tells me she wants to take me clubbing as we had never been together before, and she felt bad that she was so distant to me. I agreed, and that night we went out. Clubbing wasn't really my style, but once I had a few drinks, I loosened up a little and began having fun. The night was going smoothly until Nikki spotted a guy across the room whom she claimed she wanted to climb him like a tree. She walked over to him, and within a few minutes she was back, and she had a sour expression on her face. I asked her what was up, but she never said anything. I kept pressing because I didn't want our night to be ruined. She then told me the guy didn't want her number, but he wanted mine instead. I told her he was a loser, and there were plenty of guys around who would unalive to be with a girl like her. She didn't budge, though. She told me she needed to use the restroom and then we would leave. I waited for another hour. Allow my autistic daughter to get attacked at recess. Fine. Allow my husband to absolutely violate you. At this moment, I turn around to the sound of heavy footsteps and see my husband storming in towards us. He seems panicked and immediately asks, "What happened?" The principal catches him up to speed and tells him that since Olivia's mom doesn't think she needs to see a doctor, then they can leave her at school and get out of the office. He couldn't take it anymore. My husband lost it. He lunged and started swinging at the principal. He picked him up by the collar and slams him into the wall. I tried jumping in to pull my husband off of him, but it's no use. He's almost twice my size and can crush me with one hand if he wanted to. But I still tried out of desperation. At this point, the principal was screaming at the top of his lungs. My husband is repeatedly punching his face in. I'm caught in the middle of these two men, still trying to break them up. I looked over at Olivia, who's now lying down on the floor, stimming uncontrollably. She's clearly horrified. Two large guards run into the office and begin darting towards us. They grab my husband and tackle him, pinning both his hands behind him. It's a disaster, with my husband being manhandled by two guards. The principal was screaming in pain and gushing blood. My autistic daughter was stimming on the floor, crying out of confusion and anxiety. My husband stopped when he got tired. The principal's face was black and blue, covered in blood. 2 hours later, my daughter and I were waiting at the police station where my husband was getting jailed. I'm giving my statement to the officers, but it's not looking promising because my husband attacked first. We get word from the school that the principal is pressing charges on my husband and that my daughter is suspended indefinitely. My friends tricked me into breaking up with my soulmate. Now I want to reconnect with him. I have known Bo since we were both 11 years old. We both grew up in a small town, and our families were neighbors, so we became very close friends. We were the next-door neighbor best friends that started dating in our junior year of high school. He took me to prom, and we both picked a college that was in state with both of our majors available. Everyone expected us to get married when we went off to college. Bo had issues at first making new friends, but I sort of jived with the gals in class. My new friends didn't think much of Bo. They kept telling me I could do better than him. They thought Bo was slow-witted and too religious. They said Bo would just pull me back down to our small town, anchor me with children, and we'd both be stuck as hicks. It reached the boiling point on my 21st birthday. Two of my girlfriends came to me claiming they saw Bo cheating on me. They kept to their stories, and I foolishly believed them. I confronted Bo and started screaming at him. Bo didn't apologize, he didn't beg, and he didn't plead. Instead, he got cold and mad. He said that he never trusted my friends, that they were playing me, and he thought I was better than this. I didn't believe him, and I let him walk away. He promised that if I took their word without even looking at them critically, we were over, and he kept his word. From that day, he wouldn't even look at me. He wouldn't talk to me. He wouldn't acknowledge I existed. For the rest of college, he never dated anyone. He just worked, went to class, and graduated early. My friends tricked me into breaking up with my soulmate. Now I want to reconnect with him. My friends set me up on a ton of dates. I had a bit of a wild college ride, something I'm a bit ashamed of now. Once I graduated, I tried to get established in life, but my college friends kept just wanting to hang out, chill, or party. It honestly got tiring, and I couldn't believe I had the energy to do this for nearly 4 years while getting an education. It was when I was 23 that one of the girls called me a stick in the mud and said something along the lines of, "I can't believe we went through the effort of breaking you up with Bo if you were just going to become a wallflower." I couldn't believe it. She went into detail about how easy it was, and I felt disgusted. I didn't give Bo another thought after the breakup. I thought he was a cheater, and I told my family, who told his family, and it strained his relationship with his mom for many years. But after that point, I couldn't stop thinking about him. I told my family the truth about what happened with Bo. This apparently helped repair the relationship Bo had with his mother. Beau's mom liked me quite a bit, and she went out of her way to sabotage Beau's relationships with any girl he brought home. My mom said Beau's mom did it very discreetly, but after finding out the truth, Beau's mom came clean and Beau nearly cut her out of his life. She apparently begged and pleaded, and was able to work from there. I have many unfinished drafts of emails to Beau, some saying I wish to catch up, others begging for forgiveness and pleading for him to come back to me. But any news I got on Beau after the blow-up with his mom has been sparse. I think my boyfriend is lying about his divorce. His ex-wife is a little too close. The final reason that made me think my boyfriend may be cheating on me with his ex-wife was last month at his daughter's wedding. The wedding was to be held in Italy, and the plan was for Carl and his ex-wife to fly out there together 4 days before the wedding, and for me to fly out by myself a day before the wedding. Carl's daughter had rented out a huge, luxurious villa for close family and friends to stay in before and after the wedding. I thought this was perfect. I have never spent the night with Carl, so I thought sharing a bed would be a huge turning point in our relationship. That was until I found out that Carl and his ex-wife would be sleeping in the villa, and I would be sleeping in a converted barn by myself at the bottom of the villa garden. I asked Carl if I could please sleep in the villa with him, but he refused, so I refused to go to the wedding and stay home. On top of this, I have never been to Carl's house. In fact, I don't even know where he lives, and he has blocked me on all of his social media. I can only contact him on WhatsApp. I think Carl may have been lying to me when we first met about his divorce to his wife. I'm starting to get the impression that he is actually having an affair with me and cheating on his wife. He's so secretive with me, and appears to still have a lot of contact with her. Or maybe they decided to rekindle their relationship after their divorce. Or maybe I'm overthinking, and they are just really close friends. I mean, they do have a daughter together. So Reddit, am I being crazy? What should I do? Editor's thoughts. This girl is dumb as heck. How would you not suspect your boyfriend is cheating on you after 5 years of seeing him only 1 day a week, Lmao? You don't even know where he lives, and you're coming to Reddit for help? I swear some people are dumber than a box of rocks.